Welcome back to Jacques in the Garden. In this video, we are going to be building a custom DIY greenhouse entirely from scratch. The only thing is, I already have a greenhouse. So I decided, why don't we head down to Maine, a place that I absolutely love, and build our very own epic polycarbonate greenhouse from scratch, totally DIY, custom build that gives you exactly what you want. And in this video, we're gonna cover everything you need to know if you wanna do this yourself, including how to choose the right materials, what parts you actually need, how to install it, because we're gonna install this entire thing and it's going to be really epic. So let's take it back to the very beginning, take a look at the structure and go over the plan. So let's talk about the structure itself and how it compares to what I have here in San Diego. Now you might have seen the video before, but this is an 8x12 aluminum framed greenhouse. The other thing that it has compared to the one we're going to be building is it has glass walls on the outside and a polycarbonate roof on top. Now this custom one will be entirely polycarbonate, which should be a lot easier since we are doing DIY. We're not going to have very exact measurements here. This was a pre-cut kit. All I had to do was put it together and basically I had a greenhouse. This one in Maine, we are going to be cutting the wood, assembling it, and cutting panels to size. The other thing you might be wondering about is why Maine in the first place? Well, I absolutely love going to Maine. And the second reason is that one of my coworkers at Epic Gardening, Melissa and her husband Pete, had been talking about wanting a greenhouse. So when BC Greenhouses and the Polycarbonate store reached out to me and asked, would I want to build a custom DIY greenhouse? It was a no-brainer. I love DIY builds. I love building anything, and I already knew exactly where we could do it with somebody who I already knew wanted a greenhouse. And full disclosure, this video is sponsored by BC Greenhouses and the Polycarbonate store. I've already loved working with BC Greenhouses this whole time. I love my greenhouse, and the Polycarbonate store makes their polycarbonate in the United States using sustainable practices. So to me, that's a no-brainer to support. So now let's talk about the actual greenhouse design itself and what the goals and purposes of it are. One thing that's for sure is that it's very easy to come up with DIY plans, but it's hard to actually make those plans become a reality. So the first thing I did with Melissa is I chatted with her and I asked her what she was looking for, and this is what we basically came up with. A 12x16 greenhouse, so pretty big, twice the size of mine. Mine is 92 square feet. Hers is going to be 196, so that's quite substantial. The other thing I tried to do is guesstimate like basically where the doors are gonna go, how many ventilation louvers we're gonna have, and I tried to guess on how many panels we needed. So to make all of this easier, I then went to the Polycarbonate store website now that I had a rough plan and dimensions down and started looking at all of the different panel options. Now, if I was here in San Diego, I think it would have been very quick and easy for me to hone in on the panels that were right for my climate. But since I was going up to Maine, I knew we were going to be dealing with serious weather like actual wind and also that thing called snow that here in San Diego we simply don't get. So I reached out to the Polycarbonate store team and talked to one of their customer support people, the guru of polycarbonate, Richard. And the first question I had for him was, what do I do about all the snow?
16 millimeter is a good option for a greenhouse roof with a heavy snow load. It would be for like a pergola construction as well, for heavier snow load, because it is thicker. Being the 5/8 inch thick, it's going to be bit stronger for that application and for heavier snow load.
One of the great things about the Polycarbonate store is that it is a one-stop shop for greenhouse panels and accessories. They are one of the only companies that offers custom-sized polycarbonate panels along with aluminum capping, H-channels, joiners, sealants, and fasteners, all available in one place. And the final question I really had for him though was, do you ship anywhere? Because I knew that this house in Maine was on a dirt road, and luckily, yes, they will ship anywhere as long as you have a way of getting it off the truck. So at this point, I felt like everything was basically solved. All I needed to do was pack my bags, fly out to Maine, and get this greenhouse build going. Once I landed in Maine, I was happy to see that most of the frame for the greenhouse was basically complete. So my focus for day one was to get organized and plan out as much of the build as I could while enjoying the only good weather we'd have for this whole trip. I started by walking around the structure with Garrett, the local contractor and close friend of the homeowners who is helping us out on this build. Although this is a DIY build, it's important to remember that the yourself and do-it-yourself doesn't have to mean only yourself. It's totally fine to get help with the stuff you don't feel as confident in, and given that we're in a different state with real weather unlike my hometown of San Diego, it made sense to have a local help us with the structural build. He made sure to design and build the structure with the local snow load and hurricane force winds in mind, both of which are things the San Diego boy knows absolutely nothing about. And given how uncertain springtime weather is in Maine, having the structure itself built before I arrived ensured I was going to be able to finish the rest of the build that same week. So while Garrett focused on finishing up the end walls of the building, I focused my attention on the details of our ventilation system and double checking layouts so that we would be ready when our polycarbonate shipment arrived. All the panels have arrived. We got this huge crate here, which we're going to try to get off with a tractor, so we'll see how that goes. Since we were in a rural area with dirt roads, the truck driver wasn't able to just unload it with a pallet jack and bring it over to where we wanted. So after a lot of head scratching, we decided to turn the tractor into a forklift, and we were able to unload this crate full of beautiful polycarbonate panels and safely get them landed. And don't worry, even if you are in a rural area and you don't have a tractor, you could always just unload the crate from the truck by hand and then figure out how to get the panels to your build site later. There you have it, guys. The truck is on its way out. We were able to get this off the truck and safely landed, just barely. It's a little bit harder to get things shipped out in a more rural area where we have dirt roads and we've had a ton of rain, but it's here. All we need to do now is crack this box open and get all these panels moved over to the greenhouse site. We got the crate busted open and began shuttling poly up to the build site one tractor load at a time. And quick word of caution here, never store your polycarbonate like we are doing here in a big stack out in the full sun. When stacked, they can build up heat which causes warping or damage to lower panels. So be sure to stack them out of the sun, or at the very least cover them up with something protective like a white tarp. After all of the polycarbonate was stacked, I had a chance to look at all the parts and start thinking about what questions I had, because tomorrow is going to be roofing day, so hopefully we get some good weather. Unfortunately, after waking up on day 2, I quickly realized that good weather wasn't in the cards, but fortunately it wasn't windy, which meant I wasn't going to be blown off the roof. However, it was plenty gray and damp, but before getting my rain gear on, I wanted to meet with Richard again from the polycarbonate store and go over some final questions I had. Nice to see you again, Richard. I've landed in Maine. I have to put on some extra layers here because it's drizzly, it's misty, it's a little bit colder than San Diego, but we've got the crate and I've unpacked it all. I started looking at some of the parts and I do have a couple questions for you.
Be happy to help answer those questions for you.
We have 8-foot panels for the roof, but the roof itself is like maybe 10 inches short of that. So what's the best way to trim or cut these panels?
A circular saw is perfect. A circular saw, table saw. You can even use a jigsaw if you have like special holes.
So we have 2 different screw sizes. The longer ones I think are obviously for the 16 panels. All the screws, they have a washer with a little like rubber grommet. And then there's also a bag of separate washers that were bigger. So when do I use those versus the other ones?
So the screws that have the little gasket washers on them, those are going to be used to fasten down the joiners, the H channels, yes. And when you add the 1-inch gasket washer, you can leave the smaller washer on it. You just put the gasket washer on underneath it. And those are going to be used when you are fastening directly through the panel. It spreads out the pressure, so you're not going to crush this little channel here.
Yes, okay. So that just helps spread out that kind of the force of the screw. Yep. One of the other questions I had for Richard was how to actually seal up the ends of our polycarbonate panels. For the roof, we went with aluminum tape on the top edge, which will keep water, debris, and insects out from inside the panels. This tape will ultimately be covered up by flashing, which will protect the tape from UV degradation while also hiding it from view. And for the bottom edge of the roof panel, it's going to be getting a U-channel sealed up with silicone, which is also how we're going to be doing both the tops and bottoms of every single one of the wall panels.
In certain situations, the wood is wet, so it doesn't stick to the wood very well.
Yeah.
So then
we're gonna have that here.
Yeah, you can mark here with like maybe blue tape or something that comes off easy where it's going to go and put it on the panel first. Okay. And then put it down.
And finally, I asked Richard all the other little questions I had, such as how many screws do I use and what order should I be assembling the whole structure in. Luckily for us, he said that the roof was first, which is great because it's supposed to be drizzling all day today. And if we don't get this roof on, we will be working in a mud pit by tomorrow. After the first roof panel went on, it was just a matter of working our way down to the other end. Each set of panels is joined together by H channels, which perfectly capture the edges of the panels before being screwed down into the roof rafter. The constant drizzle and wind made this a bit trickier, but we were able to quickly work our way down to the last panel, which is where things get a little bit interesting again. So we have 3 of the 4 panels on. You'll notice I don't have much screws in because we are going to come back through. I just want to get this roof on. The last panel is going to be a little trickier because the span here is a little bit more narrow than the 4 foot. So we're going to have to cut the panel both on the bottom, and also we're going to have to cut up one of these flutes and remove some of the extra width. The side that we cut the width from, like this vertical cut, that's going to be the side that goes into the H channel, and then the factory edge will be the outside of the actual roof that you actually get to see. That way we get to hide the slightly uglier part and everything gets to fit in nice and tight. Once we got the last section of the roof on, we decided to make the most of whatever quote unquote daylight we had by securing the foundation to concrete cookies so that the whole structure wouldn't blow away. This foundation had 6 of these concrete cookies, so I went around and did this to each and every one of them. And to cap off the day, we decided to add a little bit of landscape fabric and mulch to the outer edge of the greenhouse so that our workspace tomorrow wouldn't be all muddy, because we were expecting some rain and tomorrow we have to put up the walls. We're back for day 2. I've got my murder gloves on, as Garrett called them, and it's because we're going to be siliconing. So what we're doing today is we got the roof on. We're going to be skinning the wall, which means we're going to be putting up all of this polycarbonate. Now, the way this polycarbonate comes to save money and give you more flexibility comes in 12-foot sheets. We need to cut it just under 6 feet. So here you can see some of the middle that we cut out, and that might be used for something else in the future. But this is the final height of the panel here. So the basic idea before any of these panels go up is that we have this U channel, and that's going to fit onto this bottom here. I'm going to run a bead of silicone and then pop that on. So what that's going to do is seal this edge here and make sure that no bugs or anything like that move into the actual polycarbonate and start living in here. Once that's all done, we'll come over to this side. We got a little corner channel and we're going to work on one wall. Then we're probably going to do the opposite wall. And then we're going to do the fronts. I believe they're called the gables. I'm not a construction guy, but it's going to be a little bit more interesting because of course we have the angle here. So we're going to get cutting, siliconing, and then once we get all that, I'll show you how the walls go up. For the roofing panels, we ended up using that aluminum tape to seal off the top, but for the wall panels, since we didn't want the aluminum to be visible, we decided to use U-channels on the tops and bottom, and all of that is held together with silicone. The first thing you want to do is make sure you have some gloves on, and then slide your U-channel onto the panel and then back it off so that it's just barely holding on. Once it's in that position, run a nice bead of silicone right down the edge of that channel before smearing it down a little bit and then pushing your U-channel on top of that smeared silicone. And afterwards, what I like to do is just take my finger and run it all along that seam to make sure that the silicone is covering everything. And that should close off the ends of the panels on either end to make sure nothing can get inside. All the wall panels have been siliconed with the U-channels. We got the H's cut to join the wall pieces together. So now all we're going to do is actually assemble the wall. So we're going to start on this side, work our way down, and then we'll probably hit the other wall before hitting the gable walls, because that's going to require some extra cuts. So we'll catch you right over there and we'll get this wall up. You want to make sure you spend a little bit of extra time on that very first wall panel to ensure that it's as level, square, and plumb as you could possibly get it. Since each panel connects to the previous one, making sure that you get that first panel right will make the rest of the install much easier and ensure that the last panel is as level and square as the first one. We have the first wall panel up. Now we're getting the H channel on, and then we're gonna go next one, next one, next one, all the way down. The rest of the walls went up pretty quickly, with the only tricky part being the last panel. Just like the roof section above, we had to rip this final panel width down before installing it, and the cut face catches on more things than the smooth uncut edge, which makes finagling it into the H channel a little bit more work, but just like the rest of the build, it ended up going on without much of an issue. We have the first wall officially up on the greenhouse. The only real harder part here is that the greenhouse itself, while it is 16 feet, there's a little bit of play with each one of these H channels. So the final panel, no big deal. We just had to rip it. So we cut a little section off here, and that's just a little harder to work into that channel. So we slid the channel on first, then we used the factory edge of this panel and got the channel around it much easier. So this wall is pretty much snugged up. There are a lot of screws that need to get added. The reason why we're waiting is because A, we just want to get the wall on, and B, if we make it too tight right here, we're going to need to put a corner, and that's going to be really hard if this is super snug. We want a little bit of play so we could work that corner on. So it's looking good. We're going to get on to the other side and get that wall up, and then we're going to do the gables. Now that we had a system going, we were able to get the second wall up in no time, leaving just the end gable walls to install. Each end has an angled wall, so we measured the low and high point near the roof before drawing a line on the polycarbonate and cutting the angle. After doing a few rough test fittings, I went ahead and siliconed on the U-channels for both the tops and bottoms, and while waiting for the silicone to dry out, I went ahead and did all of the silicone for the U-channels on the bottom edge of the roof lip. We couldn't get these U-channel siliconed on during roof install day because it was too wet and rainy, making it impossible for the silicone to dry. Luckily, the roof panels have some overhang off the edge, which made installation really easy to do after the fact. And once the end wall silicone was dry enough to work with, we went ahead and got the majority of the end walls up and onto the structure, which was honestly surprisingly easy. Day 2 is a wrap, and we got a lot of good work done. We have both walls fully sealed up and parts of the end gable walls done. The other thing I went through and did today is every one of the roof panels, we hadn't put the U-channels on. So I put U-channels on, silicone that all down. One thing I want to point out real quick on this wall though, is you'll notice that we don't have screws everywhere yet. And that's because we're going to come back through and tighten it all up. We just wanted to get the walls on so we could see how the progress was. So that's going to be a detail touch tomorrow, but we'll come around to the gable end wall here. So we have two identical walls, kind of. There's a little bit of a detail difference here. What you'll see is that this wall and that wall peaks up, but then this section is going to be pretty complicated because it has that unique peak situation. So that's going to be the final cut tomorrow. What we're going to do is cut that out, fit it as a whole sheet, and then cut the door out. And then the door will go right here, another door on that side. So there'll be two doors totally across from each other, which is going to let this greenhouse breathe really easy. Now, if we come around to the other wall, you'll see that same setup here. Again, we do have to go back and put some more screws in. We have all the U-channels locked up, but in the front is where it gets a little bit different. So if you take a look, the main difference between this side and the other side is that there are actually two louvers here. So one right here, it still needs to get cut out and the mounting needs to be finished. And on this side as well. So two louvers down low, like I mentioned earlier, they've been kind of squeezed into the boxes. So tomorrow we'll cut out that frame and it'll be able to breathe and actually open. The cool thing about that is that they are actually operating on wax piston cylinders. So what that means is that essentially when it gets too warm in here, this wax in this tube will expand, push this piston rod, and that's going to open up the louvers. So that's going to allow cold air to come in. And on the other end of the greenhouse, that's where the fan is. So right over here, there's the fan. It's gonna go smack right here, nice and high. And when those louvers open, this fan will also kick on and it'll pull the cold air through there, grabbing all the hot air as it exhausts out the back. Now the back is also going to have a louver. That way we're not just leaking any heat throughout the day. We definitely don't want to just leave a big open hole. So tomorrow, finishing details, final touches, but it's looking really good and it should probably be done before noon. Past me still doesn't seem to know what day it is, but present me knows that day 4 is here, and today we're going to get so close to finishing this build, and so we might as well kick it off by sawing 2 garden beds in half. Pete, who is the homeowner here, found these garden boxes on Facebook Marketplace for 20 bucks. 20 bucks for 4 or all each? Okay, that's not bad. And he was like, you know what? We don't need double depth soil. Let's just cut these in half. And now we have 2 garden beds, $10 each. That's a pretty good deal and very resourceful. So love the DIY. You could always find a deal.
Yay!
All right.
That makes me happy.
Day 3 is here. We just cut the peak on this final piece on the front. So now, moment of truth, we're gonna line it up, see if it works. It will work, I have confidence. I just have to glue the channels on and then we'll fit it. And that's like the last little bit on this side. Then we'll do the other side. On the inside, you could probably already tell that there are some garden beds going in. So this is definitely coming together. By the end of the day, we're gonna have a functional greenhouse for sure. After gluing on the final U-channel, which was an amazing feeling because it meant I was free of silicone duty once and for all, it was time to get the last panel on the wall. We knew that this panel would be tricky since it had to wedge itself between 2 other end panels, which is why we didn't screw those down too tight. The looseness allowed us to pull those panels out just a little bit and then snap the whole center panel into both H channels on either side without much struggle. Once we got the panel in the channels, we did a final fit check before screwing it down tight. And in this case, I mean extra tight because I put plenty of screws all around the doorway because we needed it to be as secure as possible for Garrett to be able to cut the door out. We decided to do it in place with a circular saw so that the fit is exactly to reality, which also meant that we didn't have to take hundreds of measurements and make sure we installed it just right. We have both doors cut out now. Garrett's cutting out the hole for where the fan and louver is gonna go. Then we just need to cut the 2 front louvers, and Pete here is building beautiful organic rich hugelkultur beds. He's already got a base of logs cardboard, and this is just straight up forest leaf mulch. It can't get any better than that. It's gonna be full of all sorts of beneficials. So these beds are gonna rip once this garden is done. So we're gonna come back, we're gonna get some doors fitted, get the fans on. It's really, really coming together now, guys. With the doorway cut out, it was now time to clean up the sharp edges before waterproofing all around the door with ice and water shield. This should keep the wood from rotting away due to water buildup. And after this whole install is done, Pete will cover it up with some nice cedar trim. And now no DIY project is complete without a bunch of tiny little micro adjustments and cuts to get that very last piece in. With the help of a handy wood planer though, we were able to get both doors in, which were also thrifted for just 30 bucks each. Next, we moved our attention to ventilation by installing the exterior louvers on the outside of the fan, which is inside the greenhouse. The fan itself is easily one of my favorite features because it offers a true off-grid thermal control thanks to the fact that it is also powered by a solar panel. And that solar panel sits right on the back edge of the roof where it could get plenty of sun without blocking out any plant growth. The greenhouse is complete, and I have to say I'm quite pleased with how it came together. So now let's get a little walkthrough through the whole thing, talk about all the functionality and how this thing is going to be used. We're gonna get started right here in the very front. You can see that the louvers have been cut out. I think the final plan here is that we will do a little detail edging here just to clean it up a bit, but these have the wax pistons installed, so they're nice and snug. They're only going to open when it gets really hot. And when it comes to the door itself, I'm actually really happy with how this came together. They ended up trimming it up with some of the cedar on the outside, which is very beautiful, helps close up any of the gaps. And the cool thing is there's also a door stop built in. So now the door won't ever overclose. Now, one of the plans, especially as we get into those summer months, is that this door is really, really cool. Because the way it's designed is you can actually spin this off, take off the entire window, and build a screen into it. What that means is that there's going to be two doors on either side. They will have a screen which is going to open up the airflow incredibly. And that's what you really want in the summertime. You want your greenhouse hot in the shoulder seasons, but in the summertime, it could get hot really quick. And as we step on inside, you'll see that we have mulch down the pathways. So that's going to keep this whole thing looking really nice and clean. And actually it does feel warmer in here already than it does outside. It's actually quite nice in here. And the great thing is that earlier I showed you guys how these beds were filled with all sorts of wonderful hugelkultur material. So now what we have on top is wonderful potting mix. This should give all the plants everything they need. And once they get through this top layer, they're gonna tap into that beautiful, rich forest material. Now, right over here on this far wall, what we have is the thermostat. So this is a really cool thing because the way this works, it's already been pre-wired. This came from Charlie's greenhouses. And let's just say, I think I'm gonna get one of these for my greenhouse because the neat thing about this is that you have this temperature control dial here. So you basically dial it in to the maximum temperature you want your greenhouse. Right now it's set to about 86. So when this coil detects the temperatures are at 86 degrees, it's gonna send a signal. And that signal is gonna go right down here to the end where the snap fan is. So the way this works is that right here, it pipes right in. And when this detects the temperature, that is going to open up. And those front louvers that I showed you earlier, they have those wax piston cylinders, just like my greenhouse for the automatic vents. Those are gonna open up, allow cold air to come in as this fan pushes all that hot air out the greenhouse. Now, as we walk out here, let's see if I can even get this door open. Oh, we got a hook. I didn't even notice that. That's perfect. So that'll keep that from opening in any drafts or anything like that. So the way this whole setup really works, the beauty behind it is that we have this outdoor louver. So when that fan kicks on, this is gonna go like this, boop, and all of that hot air is gonna stream right out. And when the temperature hits the right point and the fan kills off, this will close, shutting out any cold air from being able to make its way in. But the really beautiful thing about this whole system is it doesn't require any additional electricity or power. And that's because right on the roof, right above my head here, is a permanently installed solar panel. So this is an entirely off-the-grid solution. There's no power pipe to this. You don't have to come out here, rush out on a hot day, make sure that you get all your vents open. The wax pistons are gonna open the louvers. The solar panel is gonna control the thermostat and the fan. So you have automatic cooling. You don't have to worry about anything getting roasted or dying in that insane heat. Now, of course, let's talk a little bit about the polycarbonate. We've got the tri-wall 10 millimeter on the outside. That's going to be the perfect skin. It's all sealed up here so no air can leak in or out. On the roof, we got these extra thick 16 mil panels. Tri-wall again, that's going to be able to handle any of the snow loads or anything like that. And every single one of these panels is capped off with a U-channel, so no insects or wind is going to get in there. It should be a very stable, secure structure. Now, one of the plans overall is to have the indoor garden where you're going to have things that require a lot of heat. I know the plans right now are cucumbers, tomatoes, peppers, maybe even things like okra and melons. And on the outside, you could actually install a couple of these birdies beds. That's the plan that they're going with. We're gonna have 3x6 birdies beds all lined up on the outside here. And that's perfect because right here is the arc of the sun. It's going from the east to west across like this. So right here, this is essentially the south facing wall. It's gonna get plenty of sun. As long as they don't grow anything too tall in these beds, they could do things like bush beans or anything that's really low to the ground. Actually, maybe the winter squash and melons are better out here because they have all the space to ramble around in the actual garden space. So really excited about this build. There's so many different things you can unlock with a polycarbonate build because you're not stuck to any plans whatsoever. You can make your own plans. Just the fact right here, they were able to grow this, they build this really tall greenhouse. This is much taller than even mine. And that's the beauty of doing DIY is you get exactly what you want for the space that you need. So thank you to Polycarbonate Store for helping us out with this project and getting us these panels because this greenhouse is going to be insanely productive in the summer, in the early spring like right now, and in the fall, especially somewhere like Maine. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.